It seems like nowadays people are constantly talking about something called the law of diminishing returns for graphics in video games. That being, visuals are so good right now that even if things got way better, we wouldn't really be able to notice much of a difference just looking at it. We'd have to have a lot of it explained to us, and then it really wouldn't make too much sense to us because it still looks very similar. Well, we don't really get those wow moments like we used to 10, even 20 years ago in games with those visual leaps from generation to generation. But today I want to talk about one game that really has stuck with me. And it came out about 20 years ago now. And in fact, what I'm going to do today is actually fire it up for the first time in, well, forever on PC. And we'll see how this one is actually holding up. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. We're going to start today with this video sponsor. Do you remember years ago when people were making a big deal of cutting the cord? And the idea would be we're going to move off of cable and we're going to just start signing up for a bunch of streaming services. Well, now I've signed up for so many, I can't even remember half the time what I'm paying for, and then finding them and canceling them is a major pain. That's where today's sponsor, Rocket Money, comes in. It's a personal finance app that helps you manage where your money is going. I'm actually using Rocket Money to pare back on some of the different streaming services that I have not been using in months at times, and from what I found, many of them attempt to hide even the cancel button itself. Here's the best part, I don't even have to talk to a customer service agent and be on hold, and then talk to a supervisor, and then be on hold again, and then hear from Sharon about how she wishes she could help me, but she can't actually make those decisions without her boss, who just happened to go out to lunch. So, I guess I'll try tomorrow. Rocket Money will actually cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, and it does it even from the app with just a few presses. I've also been using Rocket Money to analyze my spending habits and help set a budget. That way I don't end up on the old college budget, which was 90% ramen. Rocket Money has helped save its customers up to $740 a year when they use all the features, with over 500 million in canceled subscriptions. To save more and spend less, join the over 5 million members using Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/spawnwave or click the link in the description to get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with premium. That's rocketmoney.com/spawnwave to get started for free. Big shout out and thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. 2004 saw some incredible releases that really pushed the boundaries of what we thought games were capable of. Half-Life 2, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Halo 2, and Metal Gear Solid 3, just to name a few, really blew us away with scope, gameplay, and graphics. These were all some of the highest rated games of the year. However, there was another game that I think of when I look back on some of the wow moments for me in gaming, and in March 2004, that game hit the market. The original Far Cry was a first-person shooter that started a series that is still alive today. It was the first to use the CryEngine, and while not Crysis level for pushing hardware, would be a benchmark-worthy game as Nvidia and ATI were establishing themselves as the go-to GPU manufacturers. Around this time, Nvidia was introducing their 6000 series cards, and ATI was rolling out their X700 and X800 cards. We were also just now moving from AGP slots to PCI Express and starting to plug our power supplies directly into the video card itself. These were all significant leaps on the hardware side, so naturally, we wanted the games to show it off. I mean, people were spending $500 for a 6800 Ultra and rigging their power supply up with a Molex, hoping everything holds together, risking it all for those pretty visuals and frame rates. Oh, and $500 now, by the way, is about $850 for Nvidia's flagship consumer level card, which still doesn't let that 4080 off the hook in 2024. Anyway, I was rolling into the Far Cry experience with my trusty Nvidia 5200 FX with 256 megabytes of VRAM. This was a big deal since the common 5200 had 128 megabytes of VRAM, not trying to brag or anything. I decided to track down the physical release of the game for PC. This one is in pretty good shape with the cardboard box, manual with CD key, and 5 CDs you need to install and then play. We weren't quite to DVDs being default for PC releases yet, so in order to install games like this, you sat there and swapped discs during the install process, which took quite a while. Looking at the system requirements, I was pretty good shape since I had some weird 768 megabyte RAM configuration for some reason at the time and an Athlon processor. Let me know if you'd like to see a video where I try to rebuild my old gaming desktop from 2003. I think sourcing some of the parts especially the case, would be difficult, but it could be a lot of fun to revisit that setup. Luck would have it, a demo was released for Far Cry to kick off 2004 that would at least let me see how my setup would handle it, and while I was able to find that same demo online now, it isn't set up with all the latest updates that we have for the full version of the game on GOG or even on Steam. The demo is most of the first area though, so I figure we can fire up the game and check out the beginning and maybe get the same effect. Starting it up, we get the Ubisoft logo, which was actually exciting back then. Which, I want to pause here for a minute. I know Ubisoft catches a lot of flack right now online, but there is good reason for it when you look back at their history and how they were just crushing it around this time. Here are some of their notable game releases just from 2004. We have Far Cry, Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow, Rainbow Six 3, Ghost Recon Jungle Storm, Ghost Recon 2, Prince of Persia Warrior Within. Trust me, back then when that Ubisoft logo hit, we weren't annoyed by it. Anyway, I went into the settings and did what young me could only dream about. I turned everything to high and then moved anti-aliasing to max without the computer blue screening. Of course, I did change the resolution to how we saw everything back then, which was basically a square. We didn't really use a lot of widescreen monitors. We had those big CRT monitors that, they were basically just square aspect ratio. And if you ask kids now, a CRT TV, you show it to them, right? You're like, what is this thing? They won't really know. They'll look at the back and be like, why is this here? It's worse now with monitors for computers because everything's just flat panels now and they're all widescreen. But that's how it was back in the day. We saw everything with our games. Really, that's just squares. The game starts out with a nice crunchy looking cutscene showing your character, Jack Carver, being stranded on an island after his boat gets attacked. You wake up underground in a cave, which mostly acts as a crash course on controls for navigating around and eventually arming you with a pistol. Hey, check this out. The environment, sort of interactive, where you can shoot a can off of a shelf. That's right, Call of Duty Warzone could never. Finally, we have our walk out into the world Oblivion before Oblivion moment, and I have to say, it looks shockingly good for a 20-year-old game. I mean, look, the caves I was just going through, they looked basic, but here everything just looks so vibrant. Colors pop off the screen, the foliage all around you looks packed and colorful. A lot of stuff is indeed interactive. You can shoot the birds, you can shoot the fish, you can shoot the exploding barrel next to the unsuspecting guard. There's murder everywhere. The game does want you to try to sneak around, but it rarely worked for me. As I was going through the opening part of the game, usually I would sneak up on the first guard or two before it just became complete run and gun with the camp going on alert. This is pretty much what I remember from the demo. For the most part, it was a sandbox level on the beach where you would start out in the water and try to sneak around taking out guards. Underwater part stuck out to me as well here. Something about seeing your arms attempting to keep your character up when you're swimming just added a lot to the presentation. Sort of reminds me of looking down in a first-person shooter and being able to see your character's legs. The shooting is fairly precise using the mouse as you would expect, but the bullet spray can be a bit annoying for pinpoint long-distance accuracy. Also, the game seems to overestimate just how accurate you are, and on harder difficulties, seems to make every enemy you face a crack shot sniper. It makes the game a slog to play through since you're constantly starting and stopping around every corner, hoping you don't get caught by surprise and lose half your health, so consider that when you're picking your difficulty options in the beginning. I realized in the next camp, I just needed to get the Jeep, and I could do it without really fighting any of the guards. So after I ran up and hijacked it, I drove off to the carrier with some awesome looking fights on the road along the way. I kept switching between first and third person here, and neither were great for controlling the Jeep. I guess third person at least gives you a better view of things, but I found the aiming to be worse for the gun. Without warning, I came to a clearing and jumped the Jeep immediately into the ocean, which is fine because I can't really take it on the carrier anyway, and the scene was just fun since it looked like something out of an older action movie and probably landed well back in the early 2000s before we saw stuff like this get taken to the next level with cutscenes being triggered and sort of stitched in for more complex set pieces. This was just all done in real time, and then I had to swim my way to the carrier, which wasn't really as fun as everything up to this point, since it was just creeping through hallways, taking out guards. There really wasn't a lot of freedom here, and eventually I worked my way up to the top level, where I died in about 5 seconds. Turns out the helicopter is actually fighting back now. It wasn't really a problem once I knew where to go after several minutes of trial and error. Taking out the helicopter by shooting the gunner and then running from box to box, taking out guards while keeping one of the bridges intact, got me to the boat. I quickly shot the chains out while holding it up and jumped in, was off to the next level. You know, looking at the original Far Cry after the opening level here, I have to say, it's still a lot of fun. It holds up better than expected visually. Sure, it's not Crysis experience that people would always bring up for PC hardware, but for an early 2004 game, it looks downright impressive, especially outside when it can leverage a brighter art style. The parts that take place in jungle areas really stand out too, since they legitimately do affect how you approach fairly open-ended camps of enemies. And while the AI isn't great by today's standards and the shooting isn't the sharpest, I think this is still worth loading up on your PC and trying out. I mean, technically, most PCs can play it today, and it's usually pretty cheap on digital storefronts like Steam or GOG. I do still wonder about the idea of us being at the roof of graphical fidelity here in 2024, since 20 years ago, I thought I was looking at the same thing with Far Cry. Sure, things were advancing much more rapidly then versus now, but you never know what new technological breakthrough is right around the corner. Is it possible that 20 years from today, we could see some of the best looking games now be a Far Cry situation in 2044? Time will tell on that one, but for now, I can say Far Cry holds up nicely. And you know what? It's fun to play a Ubisoft game again that everyone isn't mad at. But let me know what you think about Far Cry, and if you were someone who had a chance to play it back in the day on PC, and if it also blew you away as much as it did me. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.